An 8-year-old boy walks into class wearing the same torn clothes for the 5th day straight. He doesn't talk. Doesn't cry. Doesn't answer when asked where his parents are. His teacher is ready to throw him out of school, until one day he runs through the streets and disappears into a cemetery, screaming a name no one recognizes. That same week, a sealed letter mysteriously appears on a principal's desk. A wealthy stranger demands a meeting. A forgotten bank account is reopened. And someone, somewhere, starts scrubbing names off old legal documents. Who is the boy, really? Why did someone forge his mother's signature months before she vanished? And what does a decades-old family secret have to do with a child no one claimed, but everyone feared? One teacher's mistake sets off a chain of revelations that leads all the way to the steps of a mansion in North Haven, and to the man in the gray suit who should have never returned. They all thought he was just another lost child. They were wrong. But 2 weeks earlier, no one cared about Michael. Not his classmates, who laughed at the holes in his pants. Not his teacher, Mrs. Carter, who threatened to expel him for smelling like garbage. Not the principal, who scribbled budget notes while the boy stood in the hall, shaking from hunger. Nobody asked why the kid was always alone. But stories like Michael's, they don't start in schools or graveyards. They start in the dark. With a girl named Emily Parker. Emily was 17 when the world forgot her. Parents dead. No siblings. Just another invisible girl on the edge of Springfield, begging for part-time jobs, eating out of soup kitchens, sleeping under bus stops with a switchblade in her sock. And then Helen Moore saw her. Helen had money. Old money. Steal money. A widow with a mansion in North Haven, more rooms than reasons to fill them. She took one look at Emily and saw herself, back when she still had dreams and calloused hands. "You'll work for me," Helen said. "Room in the basement. Meals included. No funny business." Emily nodded, too hungry to speak. She cleaned. Cooked. Learned fast. Earned trust faster. 2 years later, Helen called her into the drawing room. "I'm selling you the old house," she said. "Pay me in pieces. Live like a human being. No charity. Just quiet dignity." That's the way Emily liked it. Then Brandon came home. Brandon Moore. Helen's only son. He walked like the world owed him something and talked like it already paid up. Spoiled. Cunning. A man used to getting what he wanted. And what he wanted, briefly, was Emily. He played sweet. Promised forever. Got her pregnant. Then vanished. He had a fiancée now. Senator's daughter. And Emily? She got a visit. Brandon smelled like whiskey and said, "Sell the house. Leave town. Or I make your life a nightmare." Emily left that night. She moved to Cedarville with nothing but a duffel bag and a child growing under her ribs. She gave birth alone. Cut the cord herself. Named the boy Michael and swore to God, he's never gonna end up like his father. She built a vegetable stand from a rotting cart. Sold potatoes with a smile. Met Lisa, a friendly neighbor. And Greg, Lisa's quiet boyfriend who worked at the bank. "Open a savings account," he said. For the boy. So she did. Business boomed. Michael grew. Cedarville Academy accepted him, expensive and proud. Emily saved every penny. No luxury. Just lunch boxes and bedtime kisses. Then one winter, she coughed. Blood. Hospitals. Needles. Diagnoses that whispered cancer but never named it. Emily faded. Lisa stepped in. "Let me handle the stand," she offered. Greg handled the books. Emily, too weak to argue, signed a power of attorney. One night, she kissed Michael's forehead and said, "Be brave, little man." She never woke up. Lisa told Michael, "Mommy's sleeping. We're taking her somewhere quiet." There was a funeral. Closed casket. Michael cried. Lisa held his hand and whispered, "Don't tell anyone you're alone. Or they'll take you away." Then she vanished. No money. No furniture. Just a boy. Alone in a house with no heat. And every morning, Michael still went to school. He was late. Dirty. Silent. Mrs. Carter saw a delinquent, not a boy. She scolded him. Sent notes home. Wrote angry warnings in red ink. She didn't know the kid was boiling rainwater for soup. That he ate out of trash cans. That he cried himself to sleep on a floor mat. She didn't know, until he screamed at the grave. That night, the city learned his name. The next day, Mrs. Carter walked into the station and knelt in front of the boy. "Michael, I'm sorry. Forgive me." And that's when the real story began. Because while the city grieved, one woman watching the news didn't cry. She stared at the screen, ice in her veins. A hand gripped the old armrest. That face. That hair. That look. It was her grandson. And she knew exactly who put him there. Emily Parker didn't die of illness. She was murdered. And the killers were the two people she trusted most. The coroner never wrote poison. There was no autopsy, no inquest. Just a tired doctor scribbling undetermined cause, suspected natural, and signing off. Nobody questioned it. After all, she was poor. Alone. And sick. Except she wasn't alone. Not really. Lisa had moved in. Greg had taken the books. They held her hand. Fed her soup. Took her trust and sold it for spare change. When Emily signed the power of attorney, she thought she was saving her business. Instead, she signed her life away. Lisa emptied the house. Greg drained the account. It was clinical. Cold. Quiet. And when Emily gasped her last breath, Lisa told the boy, "She's just sleeping." Then she buried her and vanished. Michael, 8 years old, was left in a cold house with no food and a note taped to the refrigerator, "Don't tell anyone or they'll send you to the orphanage." He believed it. Every day, Michael walked to Cedarville Academy in shoes lined with newspaper. He didn't complain. Didn't speak. Just sat in class, head down, while the other kids laughed at the stains on his collar. One boy threw a sandwich crust at him. Another called him, "dumpster baby." Mrs. Carter didn't like him. He was messy. Always late. She thought he was lazy. One day, she grabbed his arm and hissed, "I won't have filth in my classroom." Michael didn't answer. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. And then came the day of the outburst. The grave. The scream. The boy who wailed at the dead. The press got wind of it. One headline read, "Boy found living alone after mother's sudden death." Another, "Teacher adopts student after discovering he's an orphan." It went viral. Candlelight vigils. Donations. Interviews. But the real fire started when an old detective named Ray Holbrook picked up the paper at the diner. He'd seen this before. He called the station. "Get me the toxicology report on Emily Parker." "There is no report, Ray." "Then we're gonna write one." The exhumation happened quietly. No cameras. Just dirt and gloves. The lab report came in 4 days later. Arsenic. In her bloodstream. Heavy concentration. Someone had been feeding her death. Ray paid a visit to the house. It was empty. But behind a cabinet, he found a bottle, herbal tea with a broken seal. He sent it in. More arsenic. The warrant came fast. Greg Thompson was arrested at his bank. Lisa was picked up in a motel 2 counties over. Both were charged with murder, fraud, and theft. They cracked within hours. Greg confessed first. Said Emily never suspected. Said it was Lisa's idea. Lisa blamed Greg. They argued across the holding cell, spitting like alley cats. In the end, the court didn't care whose idea it was. They got 25 years each. But by then, Michael was already with Mrs. Carter. And the boy still barely spoke. Until one day, a black car pulled up outside the school. Out stepped a woman in her 70s. White gloves. Pearl earrings. A cane carved from walnut. Helen Moore. She'd seen the story. That face. Those eyes. She knew that look, it was Brandon's. Before he turned cruel. She walked into the office and asked for the boy. I need to see my grandson. Mrs. Carter stared. You're Helen Moore. I am. I know who your son is. I came for the boy. Not for him. Helen knelt before Michael, looked him in the eye. You don't know me, child. But I know you. Michael blinked. Then nodded. She didn't try to take him. Didn't wave papers. Didn't make promises. I just want to help, she said. If you'll let me. And he did. She paid for his schooling. Opened a trust. Visited every Sunday with books and cookies and stories of North Haven. She told him about his mother. About the house she bought. The work she did. You were loved, she said. Don't ever let the world make you forget that. As for Brandon, he never showed his face. Helen didn't care. She was done with that boy the day he turned his back on Emily. She had a grandson now. And this time, she wasn't letting go. They found it in a box beneath the floorboards. Folded, faded. Addressed in a careful hand, to Mrs. Carter, from Emily Parker. But it never reached her. It was Greg who hid it, stuffed it away the night Emily passed, when the walls were quiet and Michael slept in a corner of the room with his arms wrapped around a coat. That letter held a truth that could have shattered the lie before it grew teeth. Mrs. Carter read it 2 years later, in a courthouse hallway, while Michael sat on a bench staring at his shoes. The ink bled at the edges, but the words were still strong. If you're reading this, I'm probably gone. Please don't judge Michael for what he wears, or how late he comes. He's a good boy. He has no one but me, and soon he may have even less. Please, I beg you, help him if you can. He doesn't deserve to pay for my mistakes. Mrs. Carter folded it once. Then twice. She never cried in public. But that letter. That broke her. She'd already adopted the boy. Already taken him in, promised him hot meals, clean clothes, and a life with fewer shadows. But now she knew, Emily had tried. She'd reached out, with her last strength. And no one came. That's when Mrs. Carter made another promise. To herself. This boy will never be forgotten again. Meanwhile, Helen Moore was quietly assembling her own kind of justice. Not for vengeance. But for redemption. She found the lawyer who'd helped Brandon cover the house sale. Tracked the deed transfers. Found a small error in the paperwork, enough to file a claim. And then she bought back the house Emily had once owned. Cleaned it. Furnished it. Planted tulips out front, just like Emily had. She gave it to Michael. Not yet, she told him. But one day. When you're ready. Michael looked at her, eyes heavy with the weight of things no child should carry. Why are you doing this? He asked. Because your mother was a better person than my son, Helen said. And you deserve more than what he ever gave her. It wasn't easy for Michael. Even with safety, love doesn't grow overnight. Trust doesn't sprout from handouts. He still had dreams, dark ones. Of Lisa's perfume and empty bowls. Of Greg's keys in the drawer. Of the night his mother coughed blood and whispered, "Shoo, baby, I'm fine." He still woke up sometimes crying, and lied about why. But then something strange began to happen. He laughed. At lunch, with friends. At home, with Mrs. Carter. Once, when Helen tripped on the garden hose and muttered, "Damn tulips." The laugh startled him. But it didn't stop. And on the first anniversary of his adoption, Michael brought something to school. It was a diorama, his family project. He stood up, cleared his throat, and spoke like a man twice his age. "This is me. This is my mom, who I still love even though I can't see her. This is my teacher, who's now my mom too. And this," he held up a photo, "is my grandmother, who doesn't like to be called grandma." Laughter. Warm. True. But the last part? "This is a letter my mom wrote. It didn't make it in time. But now, everybody knows the truth." When he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Mrs. Carter sat in the back. Helen beside her. Both women clutching tissues like battle flags. But across town, in a dim bar, Brandon Moore sat hunched over a glass. He'd seen the footage. He didn't clap. He didn't cry. He just turned off the screen, stared at his own reflection in the black glass, and muttered, "He's not my son." And maybe he wasn't. Maybe Michael belonged to something better. To love. To resilience. To the letter that was never sent, but still found its way home. He showed up on a Tuesday. Rain tapping the windows like fingers of the dead. Nobody saw him arrive. But by noon, every adult in Cedarville Academy was whispering about the stranger in the lobby, the one in the gray suit who asked for Michael. Mrs. Carter was in the middle of a parent-teacher meeting when the receptionist buzzed in. "There's someone here. Says he's family." That word. Family. It hit like a cold draft in an old church. Mrs. Carter walked out slow. Careful. He stood with his back to her, straight posture, slick black umbrella dripping onto the carpet. When he turned, her stomach dropped. Brandon Moore. Same jawline as Michael. Same storm in the eyes. But colder. Lifeless. As if every ounce of kindness had been scorched from the soul. "I heard you adopted him," he said. No hello. No apology. "I did. You're not his blood. I'm what he needed." Brandon nodded slowly. Not agreeing. Just, calculating. "I want to see him." "No." He tilted his head. "I'm his father." "You were," she said. "Now you're a ghost." That should have been the end. But Brandon smiled. That thin, courtroom kind of smile. "You think you know what happened," he said, stepping closer. "You don't." Mrs. Carter didn't blink. "Enlighten me." "I told her to leave because I was trying to protect her. She didn't belong in my world. I knew my family would eat her alive." "Then you watched her die," she said, voice hardening. "And left a child to rot. She never told me about him. She shouldn't have needed to." Brandon didn't argue. Just shrugged, glanced around the office like it bored him. "I'm not here for custody. I'm not here to fight." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Just wanted to give him this." "What is it?" He stared at it. Long. Like it burned his fingers. "A letter. That's all." She took it. Didn't thank him. As he left, he stopped at the door. Rain streaked his face like tears he'd never admit to. "I was a coward," he said. "Tell him that if you want. Just don't lie. Don't tell him I didn't care." And then he was gone. Mrs. Carter waited a week before handing the envelope to Michael. He didn't open it right away. Just stared at his name on the front. Carefully written. No mistakes. That night, after dinner, he sat under the porch light, peeled it open. Inside was one page. Michael. I don't know how to say I'm sorry, because sorry isn't enough. I wasn't there. I should have been. I failed your mother. I failed you. I've lived every day knowing that. I won't ask you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know this, you were never a mistake. You were the best thing I never earned. Live better than I did. Brandon. Michael folded the letter slowly. Then held it tight to his chest for a moment. Just one moment. He didn't cry. Didn't smile. Just whispered, I know. Then he placed it in a drawer. Next to his mother's photograph. And he never mentioned Brandon again. But something changed after that. Michael walked taller. Spoke louder. Smiled more. Because now, the shadows had names. And when you name the darkness, it loses its grip. What he didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the man in the gray suit had one more secret left to spill. It came by registered mail. Thick paper. Wax seal. No return address. Just a name printed in black ink that made Helen Moore drop her teacup, Brandon. Mrs. Carter was the one who opened it. Her hands didn't shake. Not anymore. Inside was a legal document. A will. Brandon Moore had died. Car crash. Fog. Wet asphalt. Somewhere outside New Haven, a BMW flipped 3 times and folded like paper. No one survived. He left everything to Michael. There were no conditions. No hidden traps. Just a signature and a date. He'd written it 3 weeks after delivering the letter. Michael didn't speak when they told him. Just nodded. The kind of nod you see in old men, not children. They gave him the letter Brandon had attached to the will. A second one. Shorter. I had nothing worth keeping. Except you. I never wanted to be your father. But I wanted you to know I saw you. I knew who you were. And I was proud. Michael stood at the kitchen table in silence. Then he walked out the front door and sat on the steps. Mrs. Carter joined him. She didn't speak. Just sat. He finally broke the silence. Why do people wait until they're dying to tell the truth? Mrs. Carter thought about it. Because they're afraid of what truth costs while they're still alive. Michael looked at the sky. I'm not gonna be like him. You're not, she said. That summer, Michael moved into the house Helen had bought back. The same house his mother once owned, paid in installments. This time, it was his free and clear. A neighbor helped him paint the door blue, his mother's favorite color. Helen visited every weekend, bringing cakes and stories. Mrs. Carter came by with stacks of books and lesson plans. They let Michael be a kid again. But the house wasn't empty. In a drawer by the window, he kept 3 letters. His mother's. His teacher's apology. And Brandon's final words. Sometimes, he'd read them all in a row. He called them the ghosts that stayed. But Michael? He didn't live with ghosts. He lived with purpose. He grew into a young man who spoke at city council meetings about forgotten children. He started a charity in his mother's name. Emily's Table, a food pantry for kids like him. He told his story, but never for pity. Only for light. And when they asked him why he never changed his last name from Parker to Carter or Moore, he'd say, because Parker was the one that loved me first. At the dedication ceremony for the new Cedarville Community Center, Michael stood tall in a simple black suit. His voice didn't shake. My mother was invisible to most people. So was I. But not anymore. This is for all the kids like us. For every little boy screaming at a grave, thinking no one hears. The crowd rose. Among them, Helen Moore sat in a wheelchair, tears streaking her powder. And Mrs. Carter, his mother in every way that mattered, held her hands together and whispered, "Well done, son." As the ribbon was cut and the people cheered, a wind swept through the plaza. Soft. Warm. Some say it felt like someone brushing past. Emily, maybe. A mother who never stopped watching. A woman who fought the dark with nothing but love, and won. Write in the comments where you're from, let's see how far these stories can spread. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss new exciting stories. See you soon.